Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV, where we believe that you have the potential to be a giant in your own world. Today, you're in for a special treat because we are going to do a deep dive into accelerated resolution therapy. And we're going to tell you what that is right after this. Boom. Just a spoiler alert because accelerated resolution therapy is not watching HD TV in fast forward. But we're gonna learn. That's what I was looking. I was like, what is accelerated resolution therapy?
That is the worst joke ever. We're gonna have to go back to that. Are you talking about binge watching TV? I need to know the end.
And not in 2-speed.
Yeah.
Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, co-creator of Wake Up with Giants TV, a tribe of giants, and 12 Journeys Coaching. And I'm here with my better looking, funnier half, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. Brooke and I almost kicked him out this morning for being a smart aleck, but he gets.
You're not doing much better, though, I don't think.
No, it's true. That's my personality. Man. We're gonna get along great. This is awesome.
There'll be a lot of banter in this show.
Yeah, there might be some swears, so little kids, plug your ears.
Yeah, if you don't like language, this isn't your show. So
that's right. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Just so you know, we have the Giant test on giantsandsmalls.com. Go there, take the test, find out what kind of giant you are, and then we'll ship you the results probably via email or instantly.
Or probably instantly, yeah. And not permanently. It won't be that way permanently.
It'll get shipped to you instantly at the end. It tells you where you're at currently. And so giantsandsmalls.com. Take the test. You'll love it, I promise.
The most professional, unprofessional show ever.
That's right. That's how we should introduce the show.
Right?
Amber says she got a 26 on the test. I don't even think that's an option. That, just so you know, was a narcissist test. And I think 26 was the highest number you could get. And it's like golf. You don't want a 26. Oh, my gosh. Well, we're excited for this show. Nick, will you introduce our guest?
I would love to. So we are honored to be the host to the remarkable Brooke Braylove, LCSW-C. Not only is Brooke a distinguished licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist, but she's also a renowned accelerated resolution therapy practitioner. That's a mouthful. And an AASECT certified sex therapist. So with 2 decades of experience in her private practice in Bethesda, Maryland, and esteemed degrees from the University of Pennsylvania and Columbia University, Brooke has been a pillar in the therapeutic community. She has been instrumental in guiding adults, couples, and groups through their battles with depression, anxiety, trauma, and relationship challenges. Through her masterful applications of Brené Brown's Shame Resilience curriculum, she's transformed the lives of countless women, helping them break free from the chains of perfectionism. And her latest venture into accelerated resolution therapy using bilateral eye movements has been nothing short of revolutionary, offering profound healing to those facing PTSD, trauma, and more. So without further ado, let's dive deep into the secrets of living a giant life with Brooke Braylove. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How was that?
Happy to be here.
Intro?
That was good. I didn't. It was long.
You're like, it was. I've had better.
No, it was good. I was like, oh, I've done those things. I do.
Yeah,
those
you
things.
have. and today we might mix it up a little bit. Usually we dive into the 12 journey framework and really look at, our inner world and our outer growth and intentions and then our legacies. But we may mix it all up here just because this is such an interesting topic. And for those that don't know what accelerated resolution therapy is, there's a website link down below on the screen. And then you can also go to Brooke's website at brookebraylove.com and learn about it there. And so I actually do want to start with where this all began for you, because probably not born a therapist, Is that, I
Mhm.
mean, it's not innate. Is that accurate?
I think for some people it is. I don't know that I would say that it was innate for me. I was often the one who had a lot of crap going on and needed, my friends to talk to. But I mean, it really began because I've been in therapy, a lot in my life, and my parents were wise and wonderful and sent me to therapy when I was 9 for the first time. I was a very anxious kid. They didn't
Hmm.
call it that back then. They said, Brooke worries too much. It was all about being a worrier, right? And I think now we would just call that anxiety. We would just
Right.
name it that. um, but I think I got, exposed to the power of witnessing, the power of sharing your story and how good that felt. And I've always been someone who kind of leads with vulnerability. I'm very sort of matter of fact. I think I'm very kind and empathic, but I have a good sort of mix of the two, I think. And I actually think that's what makes me a good therapist, because I'm very real and people can relate to me,
Yeah.
which I think really helps. I mean, you know, I don't believe in, let's put a therapist. I mean, people do put me on a pedestal. That's the nature of therapy. But I think I do a really good job to be like, I'm just like you. And so, um, I was doing more sort of macro level kind of, race relations and housing justice kind of stuff. And then I just decided I think I want to work with people one on one or in small groups and affect change that way.
Yeah. Why the pathway that you chose though? Because you worked with Brene Brown's work, you're doing ART therapy.
Mhm.
The all of these things really tie together. I mean, the sexual coaching or therapy as
Sex
well
therapy. Yeah.
all
Yep.
ties into the trauma, the PTSD, CPTSD. For those that don't know what that is, that's post traumatic stress disorder, right?
Hmm.
And so why that avenue out of everything you could have been doing, why did you choose that? Because you came from
Hmm.
anxiety, right? To
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, so I had a traumatic breakup in 2017 and I just couldn't get through it. I mean, I'd been through a divorce and was managing well, but I just got stuck from this breakup and I just couldn't move forward, and it was very real and I was triggered a lot. And I tried all different kinds of therapy, and then finally, there was this sort of one last hope kind of thing, and someone told me about accelerated resolution therapy, and I did 2 sessions and I was better, and I've moved on
Yeah.
right after that. And so I immediately said, "Well, I wanna get trained in this." And so I got trained in, I think December of 2018, and I just fell in love with it. And the first couple years I used it more sparingly, and first couple years meaning like 1 or 2, because then there was COVID, and I really wasn't doing a lot during COVID. But since then, it's really become the main focus of my practice. And you know, it's so miraculous. It's like magic and science together. That's really and it's a perfect combination of both of those things.
Can we
So,
dive? Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll ask.
well, I'm sure you want to know what the heck is art,
Yeah.
right? So, accelerated resolution therapy is a brief treatment modality that uses bilateral brain stimulation and rapid eye movement and voluntary image replacement to change the way the brain stores distressing images and sensations. So that really, it is, it sort of comes from EMDR. It's, has I would say it's like a cousin of EMDR. And most people have heard of that: eye movement, desensitization, reconsolidation, no, reprocessing. I always screw this up because I'm
Yeah.
not trained in it.
Yeah.
But EMDR is very well known, has been
It's been
around
around
longer,
forever. Yep.
but even EMDR is picking up. I mean, what we're really figuring out finally is that trauma is stored in the body, and talking about trauma doesn't necessarily help. Now, I'm not saying that it's not important to share your story with people, because it absolutely is. I truly believe all of us want to be seen and heard and loved and appreciated for exactly who we are and exactly what we've been through. But talk alone will not help. And so art really goes right at that theory, and we work on the brain and the body. And art works with, between 1 and 5 sessions.
Yeah, so that's not very good for long-term business, right? You keep
It's so
healing people.
funny. It's so funny. People keep saying that. Well, like, well,
Yeah,
what are you gonna do? You're so used to working long term, and I am, and I'm like, oh no, this
yeah.
is amazing. I get to help so many more
I
people.
I love that view right there, right? That just means more people get to come in.
There's 8
Yeah,
billion
I
people
mean,
that could use this.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so I'm thrilled about it. It's like finally a way I can reach more people, and I can reach them virtually or in person, which is even
Yeah.
better.
Yeah, that's incredible to me because there's often this concept that you can only do these in front of another person physically, right?
Yep.
And I do want to dive into the science of this, a bit. I get nerded out by the brain, and I've heard, with walking is one of the most powerful things you can do for your body, period. And you can do it forever. You can do it for your whole life, and it's actually physiologically, holistically good for you, right?
Mhm.
Well, I heard that the movement of the back and forth mimics walking. And I wonder if is
Mm.
there a relationship between the walking movement that we make with our eyes and this
Uh-huh.
EMDR, and what's going on there that creates that? And why is walking or that movement so important to this healing?
Well, first of all, I don't know if you know this, but EMDR started when the creator was going for a walk and
I didn't know that.
noticed that she was doing these eye movements, and literally that was the beginning of the EMDR. So you sort of nailed it. Um, we don't talk a lot about that, because also I don't know that everybody sort of walks around moving
Yeah.
their eyes back and forth.
First of all, you have to go for a walk, and you
Yeah, that's the
realize.
first thing, and I can imagine maybe you don't do a lot of that or something. So,
Yeah. But sitting still, people can mimic walking in the body, that same piece that you get from walking, by just simply moving your eyes back and forth, side to side,
There's a
right?
whole
It's
bunch
also
of
a way
people
to
that were like,
trigger
"I don't have to go
memories.
to the gym anymore."
right, exactly, and I can heal myself by
Yeah,
walking and moving
yeah.
my eyes back and forth.
130 calories a year isn't too bad, you know? It's not too
Right.
bad.
Sorry.
So
So I
so yeah, with the way the brain stores the memory, and then you also have the chemical responses that are going on. And you look at Waking the Tiger, Peter Levine's book, right, and Bessel van der Kolk and their research, and you see that the body is storing memories all over, and they're emotional in nature usually. And so
Mhm,
people could be getting a massage and they trigger
mhm.
a certain point and they start crying, right? Like,
Oh,
so it's a
absolutely,
full
yeah.
body deal, right?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. And so what art does is we basically take something traumatic, and we ask the person to think about it. And as you can imagine, if you're thinking about, uh, an assault that happened to you, you clearly you will have negative sensations that come up in the body. And
Mm,
the rapid eye movement calms those sensations. And so we ask the person to kind of focus
mm.
on what's going on
Okay.
in your body. Now just notice that they do sets of eye movements, and literally over time those negative sensations lessen.
So you're
And then
separating
Mhm.
from the
we
vision and the sensation, right?
yes, yep.
Okay.
Sometimes you're thinking about what happened to you, and sometimes you're paying attention to the sensations in your body. And we sort of go back and forth with all the time calming those negative sensations. And
Okay.
and it's interesting. So if you do eye movement, just if you yourself started doing it, you would notice that something changes in your body. And often it's so relaxing that some people start falling asleep
Unreal.
because it is so relaxing and yawning and things like that, which is sort of the point. Because what it does is the rapid eye movement replicates REM sleep, which is where memories get consolidated, in nighttime. And so we're basically taking something that you do, asleep, we're replicating it while you're awake. And then we're asking the right and left side of your brain to talk and to figure something out. And
Mm,
it's amazing because sometimes you can just ask really hard, deep questions of a person and have them do a set of rapid eye, set of eye movements, and they figure out their problem. Like I had a person come in who was super dysregulated from a conflict at work. I mean, just super angry and had all these sensations. We calmed those sensations. And then I asked her, so what do you think the next step is for you? And, in 30 seconds, she was like, oh, it's obviously I need to do this. And she left the session knowing exactly what to do with no negative feelings about what had happened to her, the interaction with the colleague. And, she went ahead and she just figured it out. So it's really a combination of kind of solving problems and also just losing those terrible images and the corresponding sensations that come up when you're triggered.
yeah. So when you say sensations, we often think in terms of emotions, right? Affect. Is that what you're talking about by sensations, or is there more?
No, not at
Okay.
all. And I'm so glad you asked this because
Yep.
and when I'm telling people about the procedure of art, which I do, I take them through it before they come to the session. I do an intake where I say, this is exactly what's going to happen. So they're prepared. And one of the things I say is, I'm going to ask you about sensations. Sensations are not feelings and they are not thoughts. So it's not, I'm anxious. It's I have a lump in my throat. My
Mm,
stomach has a pit. My left leg is shaking, or I'm nauseated. Those are sensations. And
okay.
so some people have an incredibly difficult time with this, right? They do not know. And part of it is, look, in trauma, we dissociate. That's a coping mechanism. We leave our bodies. It's actually the way our brain takes care of us in those moments because we really can't endure. I mean, some of the trauma I've worked with is literally unspeakable, right?
Mm.
And so often people dissociate, which means they've been doing that most of their lives and they can't tell you what's going on. So sometimes we just have to work on naming sensations for a while.
It's a bit of mindfulness, right? So you're mindfully paying attention to your body. So we do in our 12 journeys, our second journey is about or attention or awareness, and then the
Mhm,
third journey is all about feelings, right? And so by
mhm.
feelings, it's not only trying to name the feeling, but identify what you're feeling. Like you just said,
Exactly. So you're
sensation,
doing it.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're linking sensations and then naming them, right?
We
And
just need
you
to
are
have
right.
them go
Some
for a
people,
walk, right? Like while we do it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and you're really into the walking, aren't you?
Well, I get nervous, I hang on to a few words, and then I just repeat them over and over again. So, yeah, it's no big deal. Thank you for calling that out.
Yeah. No, but I'm teasing, of course. And what you're really speaking to is how we calm the body
Right.
to be less anxious, angry, depressed. I mean, it's 100%. All you're talking about is we have to get in our bodies. And there are a
Mm.
million ways to do that. Vagus nerve. I mean, that's sort of what's happening is we're trying to stimulate the vagus nerve to get back online after someone is in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And we're just doing that with eye movements, which will calm the sensation.
How is that more effective than stimulating that vagus nerve, right? Like the EMDR or the ART therapy is, like you said, it's that my my butt just fell asleep,
Yeah.
right? My and I've got my coffee cup, mom fuel.
Mom fuel.
So I got that. Thank you, Andy. I got my mom fuel going. So, the vagus nerve, right? It runs all the way up into the brain, down the body, through the entire body, right? It regulates the chemical responses in the body. It connects with the gut. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And so, but instead of directly affecting the vagus nerve, which you can do through stimulation as well, they have those ear nodes and stuff that you can put on. The eye movement, how does that do that?
That is stimulating the vagus nerve as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that is another way to stimulate it. So
Yeah.
it can soothe sensations, quite quickly. I mean, again, someone will come in and they will, say, I have a horrible headache, my vagus nerve is smiling. And I loved how you spelled Vegas wrong. That's awesome.
Oh,
Right. We got
that's
grammar
my
Nazi
Las
on with
Vegas
this,
nerve.
Don't misspell. I actually misspelled waste the other day. That your waist, WAIST. I spelled it WASTE, and it changes the whole structure of everything.
Yes, it does.
Not
It
good.
does.
Yeah. Spelled correctly. It's just misused.
And
Yeah.
now I've forgotten what I was saying. So thanks for
Sorry.
that.
Well, so you're welcome. Yeah, I'll bring you back. So we were talking about the vagus nerve and the stimulation there. And
I was going to tell you how somebody, came in, and when they talked about you don't talk about your trauma. That's what's so amazing about art, is you don't have to keep talking about it. But they were thinking about it, and then their sensation was they had a horrible headache. We did one set of eye movements, and she was like, my headache's gone. I mean, gone, and stayed gone. So these work. I mean, I can't stress enough that this works. And I am helping people heal from, decades of, childhood emotional neglect, childhood sexual abuse. And I'm healing them from that. Because you
in
carry
1 to
that
5
with you.
sessions, right? Like in a really
1 to
short
5
period,
sessions.
right?
Really short. It's very rare. The only time I see someone for more than 5 sessions is when they're so excited it's worked on one thing that they then want to work on this, and they want to work on their chronic pain, and they want to work on their OCD, and they want to work on their phobias. And again, we talk about it as a trauma therapy, and
Yeah.
yes, that's how it started. But I want to be clear, it works on everything. It works on performance anxiety. It works on fear of public speaking, ADHD, sleep problems, depression, anxiety, eating disorders, addiction, or simply when someone feels stuck or has like a negative self-talk that they can't get rid of, and they're stuck in.
I have you mentioned an earlier relationship.
Yes, it works in weight loss, 100%. Sorry, I
You
just
talked
read that.
about your divorce, and that wasn't the traumatic thing. It was a relationship after. Is that correct?
That's right.
And I have some things in relationship that show up that are these loops almost. They feel like loops, and they're not from the current relationship. They're from previous. And it's like, but they keep coming up and they keep getting in the way, right? And so something like this would help me to detach from that loop, right?
Not just detach. That's only part of it. It will help you not do it. I mean, it will mean that in the moment that won't come up for you anymore. Or if it comes up, you'll like notice it, and you won't have the sensations in your body.
Amazing.
This is what people want to get rid of.
Right.
They want to get rid of is the sensation. They want to get rid of the fact that they were involved in a school shooting. I've worked with a lot of people involved in, unfortunately, a school shooting here in the DC area. And they don't, they want to get rid of obviously any images they have from that. But what they really want to get rid of is they don't want to become completely, overwhelmed, anxious, feel heart palpitations when a car backfires. That's what they don't want anymore. They don't want to be triggered and then have the corresponding negative sensations in their body come up. And I've worked on that. I helped them. It's gone.
See, I have a, you know, a visual of what that could look like, right? So when I was really little, I was probably 7, 8 years old. I went exploring on our land. I was climbing a barbed wire fence. My shoe got caught, and I fell on a ream of barbed wire on my knee. I cut my knee open. And the pain was there in the moment. You could see the visual of it. There's a scar there. I have the scar for life, but there's no connection to that anymore. There's no sensation to that anymore. The scar's there, right?
Yep.
The memory is there, but the sensation is not there. So I'm not stuck in that loop of, oh, my life is wrecked because I fell on barbed wire when I was 7 years old, right?
Yep.
So similar idea there is you're detaching. You might have the scar forever. You might have the visual forever, but you're going to separate the sensation from that visual, right?
Yeah, and what we say in art is keep the knowledge, lose the pain.
Mm,
You will never forget the facts of your life. And you wouldn't want to. You are your story. Your story is part of you, right?
right, right.
So you're not going to forget the facts, but you have no need to keep the images or the sensations. They are useless. They do nothing for you. The
Mm.
facts are the facts. But everyone wants to get rid of, the heart palpitations when they see a spider if they have a phobia. I mean, phobias are amazing. You have a phobia? What,
Of
spiders?
spiders. Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it. Not right here, maybe not right now, but let's work on it. I mean, that
Why not right
usually
now
is,
though? Yeah, because we're not paying
unfortunately,
you. I know.
no, that's not it. Legally, I'm not allowed to do that. Sort of
You're not.
a sort of a what's non-disclosure
HIPAA type.
piece.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, but
I say it like I know. I don't know if it's HIPAA type. I just threw that out because I wanted to sound smart. So
it's more a non-disclosure of art because
yeah.
you have to be trained. Like this is not, it's really important also, right? You have to be a mental health practitioner to
Mm.
be trained in art
You
because
can't just be a life coach and say, I'm going to do art therapy.
no, you have to have the mental health background because you're dealing with traumas that are so
That-
significant. I mean, some of
Yeah.
the stuff again that I've heard about, because I do ask what happened in the very first intake session. They can tell me as little or as much as they want. And then I say to them, now we never need to talk about it again.
Oh, wow.
During art, there's very little talking at all, except to say what sensation do you have, what's going on in your body, or where are you in your memory of it. um, but you really don't have to talk, and that's the beauty of the whole
Mm.
thing. So
It's
again,
just
in the
so
intake,
so
I
different,
tell
right?
them so different.
Yeah, as opposed to forget the facts and keep the feelings, right? You're doing the opposite program, which is, forget the feelings, keep the facts, which
Yeah,
is
and Lainey
beautiful.
Rosenzweig, who's the creator of art, and she created it in 2007, and
Mm,
she says, "Do you want to talk or do you want to get better?" Which I
mm.
love, right?
Yeah, that's powerful right there, huh? Do you want to talk or do you want to get better? We can talk for
Your
years.
choice.
We can talk for decades, right? And never come to resolution.
People do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. And again, there is a place for talk therapy. I love talk therapy. That's what I do. But there will be points now in my my work with long-term patients where I will say, we've been talking about this for years, and this one thing you're just not getting through, or you're still getting triggered. So I now incorporate it into my long-term therapy, and it really helps people. Really,
yeah, I
really
like
helps
that.
people.
I like that because there are things that you've got to challenge, some things that you get to work through and you can talk them through. And learning that skill is one of the ways that you would do that is to talk it through and learn that skill as you talk it through. So I can see the value of that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I'm a nerd about the human brain. I love the possibility of the full body because it's not just the human brain. The brain's amazing in and of itself, but you've got a whole system here, and I'll throw some stats out because it makes me sound smart, right? We have 86 billion neurons and 85 billion glial cells, right? And they store memory, and they help us to do everything that we do. Our character, personality, memories, everything are all stored in there. But then you also have this incredible body that has 37 trillion cells that all works together. And what I think I love the most about what you're teaching here is the idea that this is a holistic approach to healing, that we're not just dealing with the brain, because the brain is logical. That's where the memories are stored. That's where your character, personality is. This is dealing with the sensational part of the body, right?
Yeah, it's the part that makes us feel bad.
Right. Yeah, and it's designed to receive those chemical responses. So as Lisa Feldman Barrett in her work, she talks about, the anxiety and depression as perceptions of our world, creations of our world, right? They're not how we're experiencing the world, they're what we're making the world mean from our experiences. And so these chemical responses are meanings, essentially, sensations that are created from our perceptions of the world. And so those sensations get stored in the body and keep getting triggered, and we call them triggers. We keep saying, "Oh, I'm triggered," right?
Yep.
And so when they get triggered, you have this flood of chemicals which your body is designed to receive, and they happen instantly, because if you had to wait for your neurons, it'd probably be too late, right?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we're meant to get activated for a reason when there's a bear coming at us.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
obviously
that
the
would make
problem
sense.
is when there isn't a bear, when there's a dark shadow, in the woods. Maybe that's not a good example because she probably would just want to run anyway. But
Yeah,
my point is, like, if
that
you
scared the shit out of me right there. That
I know it scared me too. I was
I'm
like, oh
flooded.
no, I would run.
Yeah.
I would run. Anyway, but a dark shadow in your living room,
Mm,
you don't want to go into fight or flight because you think it's a bear. It's not.
right.
I mean, that's why it's intrusive. Trauma is unfortunately the gift that keeps on giving, I say. I mean, it
Yeah.
really there's always bears, yes.
Well, we
Um,
we we use in our training, we talk about the bear in the field, being the bear in the field. Like if you're driving down the road and you see a bear in the field, you don't jump the fence and go fight the bear to get it out of the field. You just admire the bear from the car, right? And so yeah, in our work, there's a lot of bears for some reason. And I love that you're there, you're using a bear again.
yeah, yeah,
It just
yeah, yeah.
fits. It fits with
It
us.
it
Yeah,
does fit. So, but I'd love to share a couple sort of I want to say success stories, if that's okay.
sure.
I think
Yeah.
it's important for people to kind of understand, like, would this work for me? And um, I had I mean, this is so fascinating. I had a woman who she did it virtually actually, and she basically said, I want to heal my mother wound, right? Which
Mm,
is not small, right? That's a big thing, right?
yeah.
And her mother had basically exposed her to many men who had sexually abused her growing up, right? So that's a massive thing. That's CPTSD, right?
Right.
Complex PTSD, which means it recurs over and over again. It's not just a single incident trauma. And she had rage toward her mother, okay? And I don't, it wasn't serving her because she needed to have some type of relationship with her mother. Again, limited and that protective. I wanted her to be self-protective, but she didn't need the rage in her body because it was hurting her. And what she said is that we did the session and she basically just, she thought about all the times her mother had betrayed her. And again, in her body was tons of heat and shaking and all sorts of really bad negative sensations. And we worked through that scene, and she literally couldn't even see the images anymore. They were gone. The images of the men, she couldn't see them anymore. She could tell you what happened to her, but she literally couldn't come up with it in her brain.
Wow.
And it's kind of crazy because it's happened to me where 30 seconds before I had it, and then we do one set of eye movements and I can't access it. I don't even remember what I forgot, if that makes sense. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
it
even
does.
remember the
Yeah.
image I was just working on. And that's what I mean about magic. You kind of like a lot of my patients will be like, what just happened? Like, where did it go? And I'm like, your brain doesn't need it anymore. You don't need it. So we get to the end of this session, and she basically said that she had had cancer a year and a half before and had lost all feeling in her face. And at the end of this session, all the feeling, all the sensations came back in her face,
Holy cow.
and her entire body temperature went down. So she had been hot and thought it was menopause, and it wasn't menopause, it was her rage. So her
Holy
entire
cow.
body temperature changed. And that's what can happen in
And
one session. One, I never saw her again, never needed to.
oh wow. I think of this isn't something that you can do on your own. And can you help me through this? Right. Because here's my thought, and maybe you can help. I like to give the wrong answer so that you'll give the right answer. That's how we'll do this. And maybe I'm not wrong, but our emotions get in the way. And when we're processing our own thoughts, we have a hard time keeping track of our thoughts the way somebody else might be able to anchor that in and see the points, right? So, like for me, if I'm sitting there trying to do my own work, unless I have an external tool to use, like journal or something else, I lose my track. I'm not able to keep that track going. And then when my emotions come up, I become my emotions, and they tend to get in the way of my healing as well, because I'm trying to process the thoughts, keep the track, right? There's so much to juggle. And so I can see the value of having another person there as somewhat of a guide. Is that somewhat
Yeah,
close?
yeah, and that's all we are. I mean, the only thing I would change about what you said is more
Yeah.
like we are our sensations. And we name them feelings, which is very important to name
Yep, I
feelings.
appreciate this. Yeah. Yeah.
If you don't get rid of the sensations, the nothing changes. Nothing changes. And that's what I mean. You have to get at the body.
Wow.
And
Okay.
you might still be able to say, that makes me a little sad, or that used to, but often we want you to be able to say, that used to make me really sad, or I used to get triggered. I mean, I had a woman, she had a really traumatic breakup with an emotionally abusive fiance. Okay. So, I mean, emotional abuse plus traumatic breakup. 2 years she couldn't get past it. 2 years of crying and being
Holy
triggered.
cow.
I mean, really bad. And I have to tell you, we did one session and I actually thought to myself, I don't think I'm going to help this woman. I really did. And that's pretty rare, but I did think to myself,
You
I
thought there was
actually
no
just,
hope, right?
yeah, because she was really stuck and it was almost like she didn't know how to get out of her own way. And she wasn't really willing necessarily always anyway. So I was a little bit worried. Second session, it just clicked. Lots of things clicked. And I could tell, you can tell when it's going well. It's in the moment. You don't have to wait till the end to see if it was effective. You know whether it's working. And I could tell she was doing great. And she again left with no negative sensations, no feelings about all the scenes related to him. And I love the universe. She ran into him out in public
Wow.
and had absolutely nothing happen in her body.
Holy
Nothing.
cow.
And I mean, just nothing. She wasn't triggered. She wasn't emotional. She had no feelings or sensations about it. And that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, usually we want to heal. Hugh's daughter died. He's on here on the show, and his daughter passed away years ago. And it's not like you just get over grief, right? Grief is something that's ongoing. You move forward, but you don't move on. And people aren't coming to you to say, I don't want to feel love anymore. I don't want to feel grief anymore. I don't, it's like there's that mourning, and the mourning and grief being different things, I'd imagine.
Well,
But yeah.
I actually want to get in here because
Okay.
it's amazing. Yeah, grief. I have helped so many people with grief. You
Hmm.
cannot change the facts of what happened, But what I help people, I helped a woman, and her brother had died 5 years ago, and every time she thought about him, she felt guilty and upset that she had not been with him in the hospital when he died. So you can change your relationship to grief by actually creating the ending you wish you had had. So all she did was go through the negative scene of getting the phone call and feeling guilty and feeling tortured that she wasn't there. We desensitized her to that, meaning we calmed those sensations. And then the whole point of art is you replace it with something positive. So of course we couldn't replace it with with a different fact. He had died. But we had her create the way she wished it had happened, where she was holding his hand in the hospital, and she got to say the loving things she wanted to, and
Mm,
she imagined him saying the things that she wished. I'm at peace. It's okay. I love you. I'm ready to go. Thank you for being here. And then she felt 100% different about his death. She was still sad that he died, but she wasn't tortured. And so now when she thought about him, she only felt kind of happiness and a little sadness, of course, but happiness that he had been at peace. So again, the facts will always be there. He died, but she
right.
doesn't need to hold on to guilt or shame or tortured feelings. She doesn't need those. Those don't help her at all. And we got
Yeah.
rid of all of them.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's that idea. I had the visual as you're talking about the replacement. You've got to have something else to replace it with. You can't just create a gap. I pictured Indiana Jones with the gold statue in the sand, right? And he's replacing one with the other, and it didn't quite go well. But in this case, you definitely want to have something to engage with. Barry McDonough in his work, he talks about that with anxiety. That the E in the dare process that he does is around engaging with something new,
Mhm.
right? And in yours too, you've got, well, let's replace that old imagery with the ideal imagery, the imagery you wish
Yep.
you would have had, right?
Yes. And
And
it doesn't have to be totally realistic.
okay,
That's what's so cool. So people, it's like a dream. You want the brain to hold on to something. So you have to give it something good. I always say, like, the brain wants kind of like a sexy story, right? So like if you're working on depression and then you replace it with, I had an average day. I got my mail. I went to work. It was good. I wasn't depressed. The brain is like, "Come on, man. Give me something more than that. Why do I want to hold on to that? That's not much better than the original depression." So actually, you imagine yourself, you know, I mean, this guy was a writer. And
uh,
so he imagined, selling books off the shelf and, being on every, TV show, and he was on Oprah, and he was, Oprah's not going on anymore, but whatever. He
yeah,
was
yeah,
kind of running the circuit, and he had millions of people waiting in line at his book signings, and he stored that in the brain. And it doesn't need to be realistic. And in fact, I will tell you, I often have to redo this part with people because their ceiling is so low, right?
ooh, yeah,
They
wow,
can't imagine something better. So they only, and I'll say, Okay, like, tell me what you did. I know whether it worked or not. I can tell because when it really works, they start smiling. During eye movements, you can just see their whole face light up. And I'm like, they nailed it. They got the scene they needed to move on.
okay, I
And if
want
they
to
don't, they just stay kind of like, they're not negative anymore, but they're not
interesting.
positive.
The face is so telling, right, about what's going on. And I'm curious about that process of visualizing. I have an idea around it of how it could look. The universe is, constant. Our time is constant. We think in terms of linearity where it's past, present, future. But when you're talking to the brain is present. I mean, we have the construct of future and past, But when you're speaking these visions and dreams into reality, we had some guests on the show, and one was on Oprah, Catherine Lee, and she talked about having memories of things yet to be. She was describing it in the present moment, and it hadn't happened yet. So she was describing it as though it's happening right now, but it's a future-based thing. And the more detail you can give it, like you said, the more it creates hope. Hope theory says that when you have a clear future or clear vision of the future, it creates hope. And when you have hope, you know you can be the one that's going to create it, and you'll overcome any obstacle to get there. And so the vision is so important, right? So when you're creating that vision, my question around this is, how do you speak it? I like to speak in the present moment as though it's happening right now, yet it hasn't happened. How do you do it with your clients, and what have you found to be effective with creating that vision when their ceiling is so low, right?
Well, I often, I'm a guide. Okay. So
Yeah.
the person does the work the whole time. I'm a guide, but I'm a smart guide, and I've done this enough. And so what happens is, and because I do an intake session, some people talk to someone, and again, I'm not, people do art lots of different ways, but
Yeah.
I do an intake session so I can understand what they're really coming in for. And so I can get an idea of how to guide them then in the session. So when they're stuck, when their sensations aren't positive yet, I know that, the replacement kind of scene isn't quite good enough. And I'll say, I think you can do better. So often, as you said, that's their ceiling. And so, for instance, if they're doing childhood abuse, I might suggest in this, replacement scene that they either, like, sometimes they'll say, well, it just never happened and they kept having their average parents and whatever. And I'm like, no. I'm like, who do you need? Do you need to rescue yourself? Do you need to, it's like Gestalt. Do you need to go back and say, I got you. You're going to get through this. I love you. And I promise we'll be okay. Do you need that? Do you need the cops to come and arrest your parents for abusing you?
Mm.
Do you need a grandparent to come and say, I'm taking you out of this home, come with me? What do you need to heal? And that's what's important. It's about healing. Some people can just create this fun, fabulous scene and they get better. But some people need to do this inner child, this deeper work.
Like that. Yeah.
And so I keep going. I say I'm a perfectionist when it comes to art. I try not to be a perfectionist. I'm like a healing a perfectionist, recovering in my life. But in art, I will keep at it until they have a replacement, kind of scene that meets their needs, meets the child's need. What do you need as a child? And it's very different for everybody, and I will not stop until I figure that out.
Uh,
And once they get it, and there's that either slight smile or a lifting, and their sensations become positive, and you're like, "Yeah, yeah, you nailed it." And
yeah.
I know during it.
So I want to lay out our framework a little bit, and then have you poke some holes in it. Is that okay?
Of course,
And
anything's
maybe
okay.
or add to it, however you see it here. But we always start with our journeys. We start with the non-conscious of just explaining the brain and how it works and how we create our personalities and characters and values and all of those things. And then we jump into the journey of awareness, which is waking up to that. And gently, kind of, and the idea of Brene Brown is don't be so dang hard on yourself, all the shame and guilt. We don't need that. Then we move into the journey of grief, which is like what you're describing here, is being able to acknowledge the sensations, the feelings, the emotions, however you label that. Then we move into acceptance. And acceptance is just acknowledging what is where you are on the roadmap. It is what it is. It's not a resignation. And then we move into gratitude, and then we move into empowerment tools. And so the arc there is an upward arc to where we elevate their view of the world from who they thought they were, right? And whatever's happened in the past. So we elevate them up to a point, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It just satisfies, it's good enough. And then from there, we step into vision and into embracing the unknown, seeing the abundance in the world, playing with vision, surrendering
Mhm.
pathways, and then empowering yourself and doing self-care. And then finally, we end with the legacy. In that arcway or in that pathway, it's all elevated. So we're always trying to get them up into a higher view for their life and then step into
Mhm.
that. And
Mhm.
if somebody can't get to an elevated view in those first 6 journeys, and we look at the unknown and we look at vision, they can't see it, like you said. We can't get them past their viewpoint. So their ceiling
Yep.
is set, right?
Yep.
Do you see anything in there that you would adjust, adapt?
Oh, in your framework?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's perfect. I wouldn't do a thing. No.
Okay.
What I was gonna relate it to though is where people get stuck in art, which is very similar. So
Yeah, yeah,
you're absolutely right, and I look at it as like people get in their own way, right?
yeah,
And they
yep,
just can't help themselves, right? Kind of get in their own way. So we work on those limiting beliefs in art. So, you know, if something's not working, then the next session I will try to look at what is your most fundamental negative belief about yourself. I'm sure you do this.
yeah,
The limiting beliefs. And
yeah.
usually it's um I'm unworthy, I'm dumb, no one loves me.
Yes, yep.
I mean, if we're really getting down to it, it's usually I am unworthy of love. Um, or I'm bad. That's a big one too.
Unacceptable, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
And again, I really believe that actually most of us walk around with some version of something like that that
correct.
we carry. And I think it sounds like what you do is that you make that conscious, right?
We
You
do in a gentle, really gentle way, right? We help you,
Mhm.
we walk alongside you while you do that, similar to what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And we recognize the limitation between therapy and what we do, that we are not therapists. Like there are
Mhm.
things we are not equipped to handle, right?
Mhm.
Like I
Yeah, but
can't
you've got a
handle,
wonderful framework. I love what you're doing. I think that's amazing. And really you're doing a little bit of what we do in art. We just don't do a lot of talking to get there.
right,
But it's exactly. I want you to imagine a future without this problem. Um and and the more you can imagine it, and again, you have to remember it's the eye movements that are critical. It's the eye movements
mm,
that put this and make this stay in the brain. So, you know, and I teach people often how to do the eye movements at home so they can use this tool as they move forward. I use it all the time. If I get really angry about something and or whatever, I will just sit there and just do some eye movements and just pay attention to some sensations.
can
And
you
again,
can
it
you
art
describe that, or is that in the context of your
it's in the
okay,
non-disclosure.
that's
So, but
fair. Yeah,
it's yeah, I'm sorry,
that's
it
okay.
it
Yeah.
is what it is, right?
I'm trying to
Um,
grab the trade secrets. It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but I mean, again, my point is that it's a tool that you can then use at home. And so we
I
teach
like that.
people kind of how to do that. And then they walk away with, not just a vision of what life is without this, um, but a tool to get at it and to, if they are triggered again, they do it and they can think about that scene they've created. And again, what's so cool is in the session, I'll say, so do you see that the original way or the new way? And they'll be like, sometimes they'll say a combination, and then we do more steps, we're in the process. But a lot of times they'll say, I can't really see it the old way anymore. I mean,
Mm,
and that's in an hour.
that's amazing. That's
So
amazing.
and I want to explain too, like, I want therapists to get trained in this, right? Because the satisfaction, the heart, feelings that I have every day doing this work make me want to keep doing it. There's so much burnout for us therapists. I mean, so much burnout. And I really want to encourage therapists to get trained in this because it decreases burnout. because we're not listening to trauma all day, and we're
Right.
getting in there and helping people. So I feel
Without
so excited.
resolution, right? Like, you're
Right.
not listening to it without being able to resolve it. Here, you're actually being able to resolve it.
Yes, and also it's important. So EMDR, the differences often need to, I think, be sort of talked about because EMDR requires more than 1 to 5 sessions usually, and it doesn't have a resolution at the end of every session. Often they'll say, "Great, let's take this and put it in a box and put it on the shelf." But the thing about art is there is a resolution. I'm not saying total resolution after one session, but there is resolution, and I think only once has someone left feeling worse,
Mm.
um, in, I mean, God, 180 hours, 200 hours, I don't even know, I've lost track, but of doing art. So, people always feel better. Do they feel 100% better? No, not necessarily, but they do feel better. And so a lot of people describe going to talk therapy and feeling worse. And again, I tell people you will often feel worse before you feel better with talk therapy, but not art.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, we're at time here, but I want to ask you one more question. If there was a question you wish you would have been asked during this show, what would that have been, and how would you answer it?
That's a great question.
Do you wish you would have been asked that question?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
Yes, yes, we're getting very meta.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a question I wish had been asked, but I just want to say that art is for people who've lost hope,
Mm.
who really think therapy, I've tried all these different therapies and nothing can get at this one thing. And I just want to give people hope that there is something that I believe can really, really profoundly change people's lives.
I like that. I like that a lot because there are people who have given up on things.
Mhm.
They feel the only way out is self-harm, and that's not the solution. People with borderline bipolar disorder, things that they just feel like this is completely incurable.
Mhm.
And maybe you will have the imagery of it and the memory of it, right? The knowledge of it, the facts, but
Okay.
this might be a way to separate the sensations. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I mean, it would be worth diving into and really exploring it.
Yeah,
And
and if it
yeah,
doesn't work, you tried something new and you only had to do it for a couple sessions. I can
right.
tell after 2 or 3 sessions whether it's gonna be useful for the person. So, it's also
I like
not
that.
not that much of an investment rather than go to therapy for 10 years.
Yeah, it really isn't. I went on your website and looked at the fees, and it's coaches are charging way more than this, and still, not coming to resolution. And so it's really for what you're creating, it's unbelievably affordable, right? If you talk about the cost of the intrusiveness of these things in your life because they're
Right.
costing everything.
Yeah.
And so I have been a fan of ART therapy. I learned about it a few years back. I'm so grateful that we got to dive deep on it a little more today, learn more about it. And I know we haven't even touched it because there's only so much you can share in this
Absolutely.
context, right? We
Yeah.
can dance around the surface. Ryan, what thoughts did you have as you listened?
Well, as I'm listening and you're like I'm seeing so many things that where this could be useful just in my life and going, there's probably people at home that are like, well, I don't need therapy, and
Mhm.
I don't need this, I don't need this. Well, you might not even know that some of these things are running your life,
Yeah.
and so what do you have to lose? I don't know about the shame, the guilt, the unworthiness, all these things that are maybe even subconscious that are
Mhm.
running your world currently.
Yeah.
And then what do you have to gain?
Mhm.
Everything, your life back, your
Mhm.
freedom, the confidence, uh, just not having to worry about some of these things anymore. And then you gain these tools where if something comes up, you're ready or more ready and prepared. And then if you need some follow up, then boom, you can go back. You can maybe uncover other areas where you're like, oh, that was so useful. Let's do this. Let's work on this area now. just like you said, I mean, it could be spiders, it could be this, it could be that, anything that comes up that's
Mhm.
going on. And so I'm so grateful. As I sit here, I didn't have as much to share because I don't know as much about it as I want to.
Mhm.
And now learning about it, I'm going to dive deeper and deeper into it. And but I appreciate you sharing so that I could get more knowledge. And I'm
Mhm.
sure a lot of our viewers are going, "Oh my gosh, this could be another tool, a key to unlocking some things in my life where I can gain my power back." And so
Yeah.
thank you for being who you are, doing what you're doing, and having gone through traumatic breakup and finding this.
Mhm.
I'm. It sounds almost sick, but I'm really grateful that you went through that traumatic breakup because of the amount of people that you're able to help and influence and impact, and you did that for us today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is there
I
anything else to share before we wrap up today?
don't think
No?
so. I think we
Feel
covered a
complete?
lot.
Yeah, we put that in that little box, that container, and we made it work. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. Brooke, thank you so much for being on with us. For those that are watching, we always love your comments because your comments, we pull them up on the screen. We talk about them. Sometimes we get to them, sometimes we don't, but we love them. And we appreciate you sharing this show with people that you love, because there might be somebody in your world that you're thinking of, they need this. And you might be that person. You might think, I need this. And you might come back and watch this again. And so we do pay attention to your comments. We're grateful for you. If you do know somebody, please share this with them and let them know about Wake Up with Giants TV. We have amazing guests. We've had over 200, I think we're pushing 250 guests so far on our show, and incredible people like you, Brooke. And so thank you for sharing your philosophies with us. You're no longer in theory with this. You're so far beyond theory. You're moving into case studies and results. And I love that. So for those that are watching, go make it a giant day. We will see you in the next episode.
Love you too.